Welcome to the Home Team, the show where no matter who you cheer for, here you're part of the Home Team. I'm your host, Wyatt Bagnall, and in this episode, I'm going to be giving my instant reaction to the Week 1 games. These aren't going to be as thorough. I'll do a video like that during the week, but this is just going to be a general recap of what the scores were, and then ultimately what the situation is now for these teams more than anything else. Because that's where we're at right now, where a lot of these teams are, you know, every win and loss could be playoffs or no playoffs, or we could be winning the division, losing the division. So that's going to be more what this is, more just a general landscape episode for the NFL. So, starting off with Thursday night. Texans lose to the Jets 21-13. This is one of those games that I think is probably frustrating for both fan bases, I would argue. Texans fans, the Texans have been, despite their record, underperforming a little bit, particularly offensively, and the injuries to Diggs and Nico Collins don't help. But this is a game they would have loved to win regardless and put some more space between them and the Colts. Thankfully for them, with the Vikings beating the Colts this evening, Texans fans can breathe a little easier. As for the Jets, I think this game is even more frustrating because it's false hope, I would say. I don't think that there's a realistic chance that the Jets are going to be going on any type of run. But on some level, it showed that they could beat a team that was 6-2, 6-3, that type of record. And now it just feels like it's been lost and the opportunity's been missed. So ultimately, I think neither fan base is coming out of this particularly happy. You know what I mean? I mean, maybe Jets fans have talked themselves into the idea that, okay, this is the spark we need and we're going to have to go on a run. Maybe. We'll go over that in the predictions episode if I think that the Jets have an attainable, path to really go on a run. But I suppose if you got to go win 8 games, you got to go win 1 first. So that's good for the Jets. On to Sunday's games. Saints 22, Panthers 23. I actually did a pretty good job of predicting games today, but this was one I got wrong. Obviously, the big thing coming out of this is the health of Chris Olave, who took a brutal hit pretty early in the game and had to leave on a stretcher, got knocked out, and he was dealing with a concussion earlier on this season. So obviously that's the biggest takeaway from this game. Health has not been on the Saints side all year, but when there's one like that that's a bit more visceral, it feels even worse. And especially when it's a player of the caliber of Chris Olave, it draws a lot of attention. And I believe I saw his brother put out a tweet that said that he's up and he's going to be all good. So that's awesome. But I think from the Saints' perspective, that's one of the bigger things. And you never know how emotionally that impacts a team. Because for us, I mean, yeah, we cheer for these guys, and a lot of fans are pretty passionate, but we don't have the type of relationship where we're actually knowing these guys on a personal level and seeing them every single day. And imagine if one of your best friends all of a sudden just went down and had to be stretchered off. I mean, you don't know what the emotional impact is, and if that hindered the Saints at all in a win. I don't imagine it helped. But ultimately, the Saints drop their 7th in a row. And at this point, it feels like the Saints season is probably done. I think that now that we're really halfway through the season, I think that we'll go through and evaluate where everyone is and who are the teams that we think are done, but it feels like the Saints are one of them. Carolina, obviously, good they got a win. I suppose that depends on your perspective on if you'd rather just be as bad as you can if you're a Panthers fan and get as high a pick as you want, but I suppose just for morale in Carolina to get through the season, it's good that they managed to get a win over a division opponent. Commanders 27, Giants 22. This game is both surprising and not surprising. I got the pick right in terms of the Commanders, but the Giants played them a lot closer than I expected. And while the Commanders' defense has been playing better in recent weeks, playing it close with the Giants and giving up 22 to them was not something I expected. I thought this game was going to be a bit wider. And I think that might just be that I've sort of gotten on the Commanders bandwagon a bit here. And this is a nice reminder that this team is still young. And while they're still winning, there's still going to be moments where they got to figure out how to do it. And they're going to be in closer games than they should be with certain teams. But ultimately, I think both these teams sort of exit this game the same way they went in. Commanders are on the rise. I think they're going to win the NFC East at this point. And I think that the Giants, they've made some games difficult, but they just don't have the horses to pull through and win the whole thing. Dolphins 27, Bills 30. This was a game that was closer than I thought it was going to be as well. I got it right with Buffalo winning, but it took a 60-yard kick at the very end of the game to get it done. And this is now 2 straight with Tua back for Miami, where they basically put up high 20s points, but just can't get it done defensively. I think they lost 27-28 or something like that to Arizona, now 27-30 to the Bills. So they've lost 2 games now with very narrow margins, but that's what it is in the NFL. And for Miami, I think this is about the time where we consider, is there anybody that we're trading away? Is it worth keeping Tua in the rest of the season? Which I believe that should be his choice, by the way, personally. But that felt like one where if the Dolphins were going to get back on track, they needed to win the first couple after Tua first got back. And it hasn't happened, unfortunately. As for the Bills, a little closer than you'd want, but, same with the Giants and the Commanders. Division games can be close. They can be tough. They can be gritty. And even, bad teams, you can sort of throw the records out to a certain level. And that happened here. And the Bills found themselves in a dogfight in the end. And they managed to win. Josh Allen played phenomenally down the stretch. And he's one of, I think, 3 guys that you can make a legitimate MVP case for. Him, Lamar Jackson, and Jared Goff, I would say, are probably the 3 right now. So, once again, this was a game that sort of went how you thought in terms of result, even if the score was a little closer than we would have expected. Chargers 27, Browns 10. This one was actually wider as had like a wider scoring gap than I would have expected. I thought this game was going to be much more of a slug it out, drag out to the end type of game. And no, the Chargers sort of went in there and took it to them, which we see this with Jim Harbaugh teams. They're very good. They're very physical, and they went into Cleveland and out physical the Browns. Justin Herbert has really settled in to Jim Harbaugh's style of offense, and the Chargers are a team that seem to be building momentum the further we go into the season. And this feels like for the first time in a long time a Chargers team that isn't disappointing. They aren't finding ways to lose games now, and I wouldn't be shocked if this is a team we see in the playoffs. As for the Browns, I said in my predictions video that if the Browns were going to win, Jameis Winston would have to play a pretty clean game. And if the Chargers were going to win, Jameis usually gives you 2 or 3 shots a game, and you just got to catch them. And they caught 3 picks off him today, and that's a huge difference. So the Browns with Jameis Winston, it's going to be a roller coaster just like it was in Tampa Bay with him. He's a gunslinger, and, live by the sword, die by the sword. He took some shots, and they didn't go his way. Patriots 17, Titans 20. This is another one I got wrong, though I'm kind of happy about it. I was rooting for the Titans because as somebody who the Patriots are probably my second favorite team. Having seen what I've seen in recent years for these teams, I would rather just have the Patriots be bad and get a number 1 receiver or a number 1 tackle out of this draft. And losing to the Titans was important. So I wanted Tennessee to win, but I actually thought New England would. And it got damn close. This game was 20-17 in overtime. Drake May played pretty well. Nothing super spectacular. What we got? We got 29 for 41, 206 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 picks. And ultimately, the same things that have sort of plagued the Patriots plagued them again today, where it's very much a case of Drake May can run around and do some phenomenal stuff, but they just don't really have the horses on the other end of those passes to make the impact that they need. From Tennessee's perspective, also kind of a sloppy one, as you would have expected, but in the end, they managed to get the interception in overtime, and it was enough to pull through. As far as where these teams are, the Patriots might be atop the draft now with the number 1 pick, and I think if you're a Pats fan, that's something you can take solace in. Whether or not you decide to stay in the pick and take the top receiver, take the top tackle, or you want to trade down and let somebody try to take a shot at a quarterback where, in a class where the quarterbacks aren't hugely inspiring. But to have the first overall pick gives you the most options. And I think if you're a Patriots fan, that should be sort of what you're aiming for at this point. I think Drake May is showing enough where you should feel confident that he has the potential, he has the ability, it's in there. Now the environment needs to come in and settle in. I mean, the fact that he's not completely crumbling and just absolutely playing awful in this environment is remarkable. So I think overall that's a good thing. For the Titans, you got to win, although I would have argued if I'm a Titans fan, I would want to be where the Patriots are right now, where you're in the position to have, the top pick and to be the one that really, controls all the chips at the top of the draft. Cowboys 21, Falcons 27. Tough one for the Cowboys. The biggest takeaway from this is not so much that they lost, even though that's huge and that sucks. The biggest thing for them is Dak Prescott exited this game with an injury, and CeeDee Lamb, even though he finished the game, was very clearly hurt as well. I don't know exactly what the injury is for Dak Prescott. They said hamstring is what got him out of the game, but it looked like he was having a problem with his throwing hand as well. And then for CeeDee Lamb, it was pretty clearly the right shoulder. So those are the biggest concerns coming out of this game. Dallas just doesn't have it. It just doesn't seem to be their year. The injuries, they're mounting now. When they were losing games, when they even, their defensive stars were out, but now they have those guys out, and it looks like two offensive stars could miss some time as well. So this looks like it's just going to spiral for the Cowboys. As for Atlanta, this game wasn't as close as the score indicated. Atlanta really won by something closer to 2 touchdowns. But it was pretty impressive. Just Atlanta went in, they did what they were supposed to do. Heavy dose of Bijan Robinson. Darnell Mooney had a huge game, and ultimately the depth of the Falcons was impressive. One bit of injury news for the Falcons is Drake London exited the game pretty early after getting a touchdown catch. I don't believe he came back into the game. Something to do with a hip, I believe is what it was. So that's something to monitor for the Falcons. But ultimately, it looks like the Falcons are going to be creating a gap here between them and the NFC South, especially depending what happens with Tampa Bay tomorrow night. Raiders, Bengals, called this one. Bengals win 41-24. Cincinnati, if they're going to go on a run, it's got to start now. Said that before in my predictions video, and they got it done. They got it done convincingly. They just have to really start stacking them. Joe Burrow played phenomenally today. Max Crosby and the Raiders they're not good enough. I don't believe Antonio Pierce is doing a great job as a head coach. Everybody's talking about how he's more of sort of like this culture setter and stuff like that. The Raiders are sort of coming apart at the seams, in my opinion. They don't play tough. They don't play smart. They don't play creatively. They don't do anything phenomenally well outside of that guy wearing 98. So outside of Max Crosby, I don't have much to say about the Raiders right now. Bad run game, bad quarterback play. Receivers are not as good without Devontae Adams. It's just not there. And so for the Bengals, keep trending up. Maybe we'll see you around for the tournament. Raiders, I think it's going to bottom out. Broncos 10, Ravens 41. Right about the result, very wrong about the way it happened. I thought this game was going to be a lot more low scoring. The only thing that I did get correct was that I thought that this game was going to have a lot to do with rushing yards and if the Broncos were going to be able to contain the rush. And Derrick Henry goes over 100 yards with 2 touchdowns. So they weren't able to do that. Lamar Jackson, 280 pass yards, 16-19, 3 touchdowns, no picks, perfect passer rating at home. If the Ravens are going to do that, you're going to have a very, very hard time beating them. They're a team that looks like a contender. However, my stance with the Ravens is very, very simple. I know you guys are awesome. I have a ton of respect for that organization. Their style of football is a style that I really like, but I've seen this before, and then they crumble in the playoffs. So I have no doubt Baltimore's getting to the playoffs. I have no doubt that they're going to be... I mean, listen, Pittsburgh's playing well, but it feels like Baltimore's better, but I won't put it past the Steelers to steal this division from them. But I need to see them do it in the playoffs because I know what I'm going to get from them. They're an awesome team. They play really, really hard. They play physical. They're tough to stop. I know Baltimore's excellent. I need to see it carry through postseason football. Because right now, I mean, it's status quo. And Baltimore fans, I'm not trying to say this to be like, oh, the Ravens or this, that. No, this is a compliment to you. I know you're going to be around at the end. Now it's about like kicking the door in. Take it from a fan of a team that has gotten as close as you can get multiple times and not won. I know it's frustrating. And for the Ravens, I think that's where you guys might be as well, where us and you guys are the two teams, and maybe the Bills, where it feels like we've gotten close, and then just fallen short. So Baltimore is a team I expect to be around at the end, and let's see if they can carry through. Bears 9, Cardinals 29. Man, this was one I got wrong straight up. I thought this was going to be a close Bears win, and it was a lopsided Cardinals win. So Arizona fans, I will start off by giving your team props. I did say that if Kyler Murray was going to, have one of those days where he was going to decide to be unstoppable, this could get bad. And Kyler went 13 to 20, 154. No touchdowns, no picks through the air, and only 2 for 6 on the ground. So he didn't do anything super spectacular. But James Conner goes 18 for 107, and they just took it to the Bears overall, where it wasn't super spectacular either way, but they just out physicaled them. Like the Bears just didn't have an answer, and it feels like the Bears are, they're maybe finding out now what it takes to sustain through the season. And I think that a huge part of this is the difference between the Bears and the Commanders, Dan Quinn versus Matt Eberflus. Dan Quinn knows what it takes to get a team to the Super Bowl. And Matt Eberflus has never shown any sign that he knows how to make the Bears win. I don't expect him to be the Bears coach next year. As for Arizona, I think they're live to make the playoffs. I think that the NFC West is super wide open. If San Francisco can never get fully healthy, this division is certainly up for the taking. And I think Arizona, legitimately, I thought they were just like the feisty team. The more I see of the Cardinals, the more I'm impressed. And I think they have an actual shot to go and win the NFC West. Jaguars 23, Eagles 28. This game was very interesting in that it started off as, I believe, 22-0, and then all of a sudden Jacksonville roared back, and then it got close at the end, but Philly ultimately pulled it out. Obviously, everybody's going to talk about the Saquon Barkley play. It was an awesome play where he hurdles somebody but backwards. Super cool. I doubt we'll see it again. There's a lot of luck involved in that, but he's a great player. He's one of those guys that's going to be a candidate for Offensive Player of the Year. I think I'm going to do a midseason awards thing and a midseason All-Pro team, and Saquon Barkley is certainly going to be in consideration for several of those places. He's playing phenomenally well. As for Jacksonville, you played close, but you just didn't start fast enough. Not even close. You can't be down 22-0 against a good team. Philly's not a great team, but they're a good team, and you can't get down to a team like that and expect you're going to come back, especially when that team's at home. So, Jacksonville, it's just not their year. And I think that we need to have a lot of questions about Jacksonville, because I know everybody's catching on now with the Jets thing. I'm like, oh, ownership's just awful. Jacksonville has the same type of problem. Any of these teams that are just awful for years and years and years on end and don't show any sign of improvement, usually that problem starts at the very top and trickles down. So I think that in terms of the success of the Jaguars, it's time to take a bigger picture look at the organization and ask what's wrong. Philly, they're going to be in a 2-team race with the Commanders for the division. I've been more impressed with the Commanders, but Philly's definitely talented. And if they just win the matchups with Washington, this division could be theirs. So, feisty, really good game. Shouldn't have been. The other play of the game, obviously, Devontae Smith with maybe the catch of the year. Awesome one-handed catch. Got him on my fantasy team, so that's nice. Ultimately, Eagles continue to stack wins, even though they're not always super impressive. And Jaguars continue to find ways to lose. Rams 26, Seahawks 20. Another overtime game today. This was a game where the two teams essentially played opposite games. Seattle lived and died by the big play, and the Rams lived and died by something more slower and methodical, right down to the very last play where they had the one big play for an amazing one-handed catch in overtime for a touchdown. It was a great catch, and ultimately the Rams win. Seattle's defense actually played really well in this game, and it was their offense that let them down. Geno Smith throws a 103-yard pick six, I believe. I think it was Cam Curl, the rookie safety for the Rams. And the Rams' young defense, they have their moments where they look young, but they also have their moments where that youth shows up and they make huge plays and they're spark plug energy plays. Jared Verse also was super impactful in this one. There's not a runaway defensive rookie of the year, but as of right now, Jared Verse would have my vote. So I said that the Rams are the team that I'm most worried about as a Niners fan in terms of winning the NFC West. And this was a game that sort of showed why. It was a little closer than I thought. Puka Nacua got ejected in the first half, which is not good. We can't be doing that. But ultimately, the Rams show what they are. They're resilient. They're tough to beat. You can't really keep them down. And if you don't play 60 minutes of good ball with the Rams, you're going to lose. Lions 24, Packers 14. Biggest story of the game, Jordan Love did not look healthy. This was something I mentioned a lot in the predictions video, but Jordan Love his health directly impacted the Packers and potentially impacted 10 points. Number one, he tried to escape out, couldn't escape, and just threw out a really ill-advised pass that got picked off by Kirby Joseph for a pick six. And then right before the half, when they were going to try to run down and either clock the ball or run the field goal team out there to try to get a last-minute field goal, Jordan Love couldn't move fast enough. Time expires. Packers go to halftime. There's without any points. There's a good chance that he wasn't going to get there anyways because it was going to be a long run to try to get down there and spike it. But he would have had a better chance. And ultimately, the Lions, really creative. They played well defensively. They were stifling. Josh Jacobs had a good first half, but the Lions clamped down a bit more in the second half. And they're just creative. They had 2 touchdowns on fourth down in the red zone, as Detroit does. They've been able to be on the good end of those plays so far this year. Wouldn't be shocked at all if eventually those decisions are going to come back and cost them a game. And you just have to hope it's not in the playoffs like it was last year. But ultimately, the Lions remain, in my opinion, the best team in the NFL right now. And a lot of respect for them. They went out really ugly game in the rain, and they still put up 24. So that narrative about them needing to play clean and in a dome and stuff like that, I think the Lions, with making the conscious effort to improve their defense, and then, Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, heavy run game, I think that they're built to play in the weather too now. Whereas maybe 2 years ago they weren't. I think now they've built themselves to do so. And then Sunday Night Football, Colts 13, Vikings 21. Ultimately, this is a pretty ugly game if I'm being really real. The Colts didn't have much. I don't think they scored an offensive touchdown, actually, looking at this. I know they got a defensive touchdown in there early in the game. And then the Vikings, several missed opportunities, 2 missed kicks. Colts missed one as well. So lots of mistakes, and Minnesota pulls away at the end. I think that this was a game that shows that Indianapolis is just not quite there. I know the Anthony Richardson benching is controversial. And honestly, I couldn't tell you if it's for better or worse for him and for the Colts, and who knows. I'm of the mindset of there needs to be a definitive decision made on that, and you got to just stick with it and live with it. And that we can't be flip-flopping between guys. There's no cohesion, there's no consistency, and it's going to be damn near impossible to build. As for Minnesota, they came back really needing a win after dropping 2 straight. They get a win, although it was not as pretty as they would have wanted, certainly at times. Lots of interceptions in this game. I believe it was 2 picks by each side, and then the Vikings had the fumble for a touchdown. So not clean by either side, certainly. Both defenses had a good day. Brian Flores continues to impress me a lot as a defensive coach, making things look difficult, making things look complicated. It's all very elaborate. I think that in the modern NFL, that seems to be what works. The days of this is what we do and we execute it really well, I think that's been figured out because these offensive coaches, they just figured out what you do and they figured out what your rules are and they're breaking them. So the good teams are able to do complex things, man coverages, and the Vikings are at the cutting edge of that. So it's all very impressive. Colts back to the drawing board, and they got to look themselves in the mirror and ask some tough questions. And as for the Vikings, the role continues. The NFC North continues to be the most competitive division in the NFL, and I love it. So those are my first reactions to the Week 9 games up to now. I'll do another one tomorrow night for the Monday Night Football game, and then afterwards I'll do a bit more of an in-depth breakdown, and then obviously predictions and things like that. And we'll get into like all-pro things, mid-season awards, mid-season all-pro. So yeah, thanks so much for tuning in. Hit like, hit subscribe, and share the video. Appreciate it. Have a great night. Peace.